It all starts with a truth that no one really wants to face. The people you allow into your life shape the way you see yourself. And sometimes the ones you hold closest are the ones slowly poisoning you from the inside. Maybe you've felt it, a subtle dread when their name lights up your phone, that knot in your stomach when you're about to see them, the emotional hangover after every interaction. But you tell yourself, it's not that bad. And so the cycle continues. Carl Jung once said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's exactly what happens when we keep tolerating toxic relationships. We think it's just bad luck. We think we're being kind. We think we're just too sensitive. But what's really going on is this: we're reacting from a wounded place, driven by invisible forces we've never paused to name. And that's what today is about. I'm going to walk you through a method inspired by Jung that will change the way you deal with toxic people forever. No more drama, no more guilt, no more explaining yourself until you're emotionally drained. Just clarity, power, and boundaries that actually work. This isn't about cutting people off out of anger. It's about cutting the cord of manipulation. Imagine your mind like a room full of mirrors. Every interaction reflects something back to you. Now, when you keep engaging with someone who manipulates, who drains you, who makes you feel like you're never enough, you're really looking at a reflection of a part of yourself that still believes you deserve that. Jung called this the activation of an archetype, an inner role we take on unconsciously. One of those archetypes is the wounded self, that part of you that clings to the idea that if you're good enough, kind enough, giving enough, they'll finally treat you right. But they won't. Because that pattern isn't about them, it's about you. And that's where the technique begins. There are 3 steps. The first is to notice the trigger. That moment when your chest tightens, your stomach flips, or your thoughts start racing, that's the body screaming for attention. Instead of reacting right away, you pause, just for a second, take a deep breath and become the observer. Second, name the feeling. Guilt, fear of rejection, need for approval. As soon as you put a name to it, you take your power back. Jung believed that naming a thing is the first act of taking control over it. And third, choose your response. Not from fear, not from obligation, but from your center. Sometimes the response is silence. Sometimes it's a simple, "Now's not a good time for me." No drama, no performance, just truth. I tried this once with a friend who always seemed to need rescuing. Every call was a crisis. Every message was urgent, and I used to drop everything for her, thinking I was being a good person, until I noticed I felt resentful, tired, invisible. So the next time she called, I paused. I breathed. I realized I felt responsible for her emotional well-being, and I simply said, "I trust you'll figure this out." She didn't like it. She pulled away. But for the first time, I didn't chase. And you know what? I felt peace. You might be thinking, but what if it's family? What if I can't just walk away? And I get it. But here's the truth. Love without boundaries becomes sacrifice, and sacrifice without purpose becomes resentment. You don't have to cut ties, but you do have to stop bleeding out emotionally every time someone tugs at your guilt. You're not their lifeline. You're not their fixer. You're not their emotional punching bag. Jung said that the meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is a reaction, both are transformed. But if only you keep transforming, if only you keep bending, shrinking, swallowing your truth, then what you're in isn't connection, it's erosion. There was a time in my life when I genuinely believed I was cursed, that I somehow had a magnet for emotionally manipulative, selfish, draining people. The ones who smile in your face but slowly eat away at your peace. I thought it was just how life worked, that I had to be stronger, tougher, more patient. But it wasn't about strength, it was about awareness. And when I started studying Jung's ideas, something clicked. I wasn't attracting these people by accident. I was repeating a pattern. And a pattern doesn't change by chance. It changes through clarity. You know that heaviness you feel after being around someone who always plays the victim. That emotional fatigue that lingers long after the conversation ends. That's not just in your head. It's your energy being drained. Jung would explain this through the concept of psychic projection, when someone unconsciously places their unresolved emotions onto you. And if you're not aware, you absorb it, you carry it. You even begin to think it's yours. But when you pause, label, and choose your response with intention, that projection loses power. You stop being a sponge, you start being a mirror. I remember so clearly one day, someone close to me, someone who always made their crisis my problem, called me up again. Same drama, same helplessness, same manipulative guilt trip. But this time, I didn't jump in to save them. I noticed the trigger, tightness in my chest, shallow breath. I named it, pressure to fix. And then I answered differently. I hear you, but I can't be the one to hold this right now. There was silence. They didn't know what to do with this new version of me. And I realized neither did I. But for the first time, I wasn't sacrificing my peace to be the hero in someone else's chaos. And maybe you need to do that too. Maybe you've been the emotional crutch for someone who never stands on their own. Maybe you've mistaken empathy for obligation. But here's what no one tells you. Toxic people don't always look toxic. Sometimes they show up as kind, as caring, as soft-spoken. They offer advice, they check in. But pay attention. Do you feel drained after talking to them? Do you feel smaller, guilty, confused? That's the sign. That's the leak in your energy field. Jung called this kind of interaction psychic vampirism. Not because they're evil, but because they're unconscious. They feed on your light without realizing it. And if you don't protect yourself, you become their fuel. The method I've shared with you is your protection, not a wall to hide behind, but a filter to move through. Every time you pause instead of react, every time you name instead of suppress, every time you respond from your center instead of your fear, you're breaking the pattern. You're teaching your nervous system that you are no longer available for manipulation, that you are no longer playing the role they wrote for you in their story. And the more you practice, the faster it gets. You enter a conversation and your body speaks first. Your gut tightens, your chest lifts, your breath changes. That's not anxiety. It's intuition. It's wisdom. It's your internal compass saying, be alert. And now you have the tools to listen and act. I want you to think now. Who in your life consistently drains your energy? Who makes you feel like you're walking on eggshells, constantly editing yourself just to keep the peace? Who guilts you into staying, helping, giving more than you have? Picture them. Picture the next time they reach out, and imagine yourself applying this method. Pause, identify, speak your truth. Maybe that truth is, not today. Maybe it's silence, but let it come from self-respect, not from fear. It's going to feel uncomfortable. You might feel guilty. You might even miss them. But listen closely. Guilt is not a sign that you're wrong. It's a sign that you're healing. It's the resistance of the old self as the new self takes its place. Jung said that individuation, becoming your true self, requires a confrontation with your shadow. And sometimes, that shadow is hidden in the relationships we keep out of habit, out of fear, out of old programming. And here's the gift in all of this. The more you say no to what drains you, the more room you create for what restores you. For the friendships that breathe life into you. For the silence that feels safe. For the connection that doesn't cost your mental health. That's what this is about. Not about being cold, not about pushing people away, but about finally choosing peace over performance. You're not here to be everyone's lifeline. You're here to be your own anchor. Here's something no one really prepares you for when you start distancing yourself from toxic people: the emptiness. When you finally say no, when you ignore the message, when you stop being the one who always shows up, a strange silence follows. And for someone who's spent their whole life bending to please others, that silence can feel like abandonment, like loneliness. But in reality, it's your first taste of freedom. Jung once said that loneliness doesn't come from having no people around you. It comes from being unable to share what truly matters to you. And that's exactly what happens. You start hearing your own voice again, but you don't yet know how to express it. You don't know who you are without the weight of others pulling you in every direction. That's where the real journey begins, and it takes guts, because it forces you to confront all the ways you've betrayed yourself. The times you swallowed your feelings to avoid conflict, the times you forced a smile when your spirit was exhausted, the times you convinced yourself it wasn't that bad, when deep down it was breaking you. And here's the hard truth. As long as you keep trying to fix others, you're avoiding fixing yourself. This technique isn't just about eliminating toxic people, it's about healing the part of you that kept inviting them in. That part of you, let's call it what it is, was addicted to being needed. It found identity in being the caretaker, the peacekeeper, the rescuer. But it's a lie that serving others at your own expense is noble. Jung referred to these internal patterns as autonomous complexes, emotional blueprints that operate like programs inside us. And while they're unconscious, they run the show. That's why you keep finding yourself in the same dynamics, the same roles, the same wounds, wearing different faces. But now, by pausing, labeling, and consciously responding, you're disrupting the program. You're dismantling that code. And with every step, you're telling yourself, I'm no longer playing small so others can stay comfortable. That's not rejection, that's rebirth. And here's something amazing. When you change your energy, the people around you change too. Suddenly, the same old conversations feel unbearable. The same drama feels ridiculous. The same excuses don't land anymore. Because you're no longer energetically available for that. And guess what happens? The wrong people start falling away. They ghost you. They lash out. They blame you for changing. Let them. That's the sign that the shift is working. What comes next is even more powerful. You'll notice new kinds of people entering your space. People who respect your time. Who speak clearly. Who don't play games. People who don't need you to shrink for them to feel secure. And the reason they show up? Because now you're a match for them. You've raised your frequency. Not spiritually, but emotionally, relationally. You've shifted from scarcity to self-worth. And the world reflects that. Now let me ask you something you might have never stopped to consider. How much of your identity was built around tolerating pain? Around holding space for people who never held space for you? Around staying loyal to dysfunction because it was familiar? You don't have to live like that anymore. You're allowed to be new. You're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to walk away from the old version of you that needed people who don't even see you. You're not being selfish for choosing peace. You're being responsible. Responsible for your mental clarity, for your emotional boundaries, for your nervous system. People might not like it, but that's okay. You're not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to live in alignment with who you are when no one is looking. That's real strength. It won't be easy. Some days you'll doubt yourself. You'll replay the old conversations. You'll miss the chaos you used to call connection. That's normal. That's part of the detox. But every time you choose presence over guilt, awareness over autopilot, inner truth over external approval, you're winning. Quietly, powerfully, permanently. So let me ask you now, how many times have you said yes when every cell in your body was screaming no? How many times did you show up for someone who wouldn't even notice if you disappeared? How many nights did you stay awake, rehearsing what you should have said, trying to find the right words to earn a little bit of peace? You don't need to earn peace. You are peace. You just forgot. You got distracted by roles you were never meant to play, by people who only knew how to love you in pieces. But you're whole. You just need to remember what it feels like to stand in that wholeness again. Let me tell you something powerful. Cutting toxic people out of your life isn't really about cutting people. It's about cutting patterns. Because you can block their number, you can avoid the conversations, you can physically walk away, but if the pattern still lives inside you, it'll just find a new face. You'll end up in the same dynamic with a different name, a different smile, but the same emotional trap. And then you'll sit there wondering why this keeps happening to you. But Jung made it clear, what you refuse to confront, you're doomed to repeat. The people are just messengers. The lesson is in you. And until that lesson is faced, life will hand you the same experience over and over again, just in different packaging. That's not punishment. That's an invitation, an opportunity to finally say, I've had enough, and I'm telling you this because I lived it. I changed jobs, cities, social circles, and yet I kept attracting the same type of people. Emotionally needy, controlling, possessive, always requiring more than I could give. And for a while, I blamed them. Thought they were the problem. But they were just responding to the frequency I was putting out, one of emotional over-availability, guilt-driven generosity, and a constant fear of being rejected. That's what had to change. That's where this method goes deeper than just setting boundaries. It transforms the very signal you're sending out to the world. This isn't just about protecting yourself, it's about rebuilding your self-worth from the inside out. Every time you notice a trigger, every time you name the feeling, every time you respond from a grounded place, you're doing more than just managing a situation. You're rewriting your emotional DNA. You're showing yourself that you're no longer available for manipulation, guilt, or the silent expectation to always be the one who bends. The more you do this, the more natural it becomes. One day you'll hear the same tone of voice, the same passive-aggressive comment, the same emotional blackmail, and it won't move you, it won't shake you. It'll land, but it won't stick, because your boundaries won't be made of anger or fear anymore. They'll be made of clarity, of self-respect, of peace. And when that happens, you'll start to notice something else: ease. You'll start craving quiet instead of chaos. You'll walk into a room and feel safe because no one there is pulling at your energy. You'll start choosing relationships that nourish you instead of depleting you. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you finally remembered that you deserve better than pain. Take a moment and ask yourself, what am I still holding onto that's already expired? What am I still emotionally investing in that's never given me a return? Who am I still letting drain my energy because I'm afraid of what will happen if I walk away? Those are the questions that change everything. And yes, people will notice the shift. They'll say, you're cold now, distant, different. Let them. Because they only knew how to relate to the version of you that had no boundaries. That said yes when you meant no. That stayed quiet just to keep the peace. They don't know who you are now. And that's not your problem. That's their adjustment to make. Growth is uncomfortable, not just for you, but for everyone who benefited from your lack of it. So when they pull away, don't chase. When they try to guilt you, don't explain. When they test your new boundaries, don't collapse. Stand in your truth, again and again, until it becomes your new normal. Let me ask you something bold. Who would you be today if you had never let them dim your light? Who would you be if you had always spoken up, walked away, drawn the line? That version of you, the one who's clear, grounded, unapologetically whole, isn't some fantasy. That version is in you. It's just been buried under years of survival, of people-pleasing, of inherited shame. You're not meant to be a container for other people's projections. You're not meant to carry what they refuse to deal with, and you're not meant to sacrifice your peace for their approval. Your peace is your responsibility, and today you can choose it fully, finally, and without guilt. And here's the truth most people avoid because it's uncomfortable. Peace feels boring when you've spent your whole life surviving chaos. Silence feels awkward when you've been trained to respond to drama. Respect feels distant when you're used to codependence. So don't be surprised if your nervous system resists, if you feel restless in the quiet, if part of you wants to go back, not because it was good, but because it was familiar. This is where the real work begins. Because the emotional detox doesn't just remove the people, it removes the illusions, the fantasy that if you just loved harder, tried more, stayed longer, they would finally change. But they didn't. And maybe they never will. And that's not your failure. That's just reality. You're not here to fix what's broken in others. You're here to heal what's been neglected in you. There will be grief. That's part of letting go. Grief for the time you wasted, for the parts of yourself you silenced, for the boundaries you didn't set. But grief is not weakness. It's acknowledgement. It's your soul catching up to your truth. And when you move through it, not around it, you come out clearer, lighter, stronger. One of the most powerful shifts happens when you stop asking, "Why are they like this?" and start asking, "Why did I tolerate it?" That's where the breakthrough lives, because you realize it was never about them. It was about the part of you that thought pain was the price of love. That's the root. And when you pull it out, everything changes. Jung called this individuation, becoming the person you were meant to be before the world told you who to become. And it doesn't happen in a straight line. Some days you'll feel empowered. Other days you'll feel like a mess. Some days you'll want to cut all ties. Other days you'll crave the comfort of old patterns. That's okay. Healing isn't linear. But every time you choose honesty over harmony, alignment over approval, you grow. Let me tell you a secret. Your energy doesn't lie. When you shift, people feel it. Even if you say nothing, they sense the change. Some will try to guilt you back into the old version of you. Others will respect the new you and rise with you. Your job isn't to control their reaction. Your job is to stay rooted in your truth. And you don't need a big dramatic exit. Sometimes it's just less access. Shorter replies, longer pauses, clearer tone. Sometimes it's the silence that says everything. The new boundary doesn't always need to be announced. It just needs to be lived. There's a calm that comes when you no longer explain yourself, when you don't chase closure, when you stop rehearsing the perfect comeback, because suddenly you're not trying to win an argument. You're just done participating in dysfunction. And that kind of peace, it's priceless. So if you're watching this right now and something in you feels heavy, tired, stretched thin, listen to it. That's not you being dramatic. That's your inner self asking for protection, for space, for clarity. And it's okay to give yourself what no one else ever did. You don't need permission to walk away. You don't need everyone to understand. You don't owe explanations to those who weren't listening in the first place. You only owe it to yourself, to live fully, to love freely, to protect your peace like your life depends on it. Because it does. And yes, it will feel selfish at first. But there's a difference between being selfish and being self-honoring. The first comes from fear. The second comes from healing. And the more you choose yourself, the more you'll attract people who do the same, who meet you in wholeness, not in need, who love you without trying to own you, who stand with you, not on top of you. That's what you're making room for now. So if it hurts to let go, let it. If it's scary to be alone, breathe through it. If the silence feels unfamiliar, sit in it. Because on the other side of that discomfort is the version of you that doesn't settle, doesn't chase, doesn't beg. A version that knows peace isn't something you find. It's something you choose, protect, and become. No one else can do this for you. Not a friend, not a partner, not a therapist. Not even the best advice in the world will matter if you're still waiting for permission to choose yourself. At some point you have to draw the line, not because you're angry, not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop bleeding for people who only ever handed you knives. Jung taught that transformation begins the moment we stop avoiding our darkness and start integrating it. This isn't about pretending to be perfect or never feeling hurt again. This is about learning to see clearly, to love wisely, to give from overflow, not from depletion. Because when you finally stand in your own worth, something shifts permanently. You stop begging for what you can give yourself, and when that shift happens, everything around you rearranges. Relationships that once consumed you lose their grip. Situations that once triggered you don't even register. You're no longer pulled by guilt or obligation. You respond, not react. You choose, not chase. You honor, not appease. The most powerful boundary is not the one you shout, it's the one you live. When your presence says, "I'm no longer available for this," there's no need for explanation. It's felt, it's clear, and it's enough. So here's my final invitation to you. Write it down. One name, one situation, one habit, something or someone you know you've outgrown. And next to it, write these words: I release this with love, not with resentment, not with shame, with love. Because holding on is what got you stuck. Letting go is what sets you free. You're not behind, you're not broken, you're just waking up. Waking up to the fact that your peace is priceless, your energy is sacred, and your time is not up for negotiation. From now on, let every decision you make reflect that. This is the work of becoming, of remembering, of returning to who you were before the world told you who to be. You don't need to yell, you don't need to prove. Just be so rooted in your truth that no storm can shake it. Now I want to hear from you. What part of this hit hardest? What did you realize about yourself through this message? Share it below, and let's turn this comment section into a space of clarity, courage, and collective healing. If this touched something in you, if you felt seen, heard, validated, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. We're just getting started. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Let's connect.